finally, it looks like we're getting decent weather. I don't know what's been up with this summer. It's been steaming hot and then raining all the time, or early summer it was cold. Seems like finally we're going to get some real actual summer weather now that summer's like 99% over. But hey, you know what? It puts us in a good mood. I get to have a cigar, so we'll have some fun this week on the smoke-filled room. And not only that, though, we've got two awesome guests, one of which just got back from Canada. We got Terri Bryant, state senator for the 58th district, also the assistant minority leader, worked for the Department of Corrections for 2 decades, and you were just up in Canada, weren't you?
I was at the CSG Midwest conference, so Midwest legislators and Canadian legislators, and so it's binational, bi-state, bicameral, bi-party. I mean, it was bipartisan, very interesting, and it was stuff that really is important to me right now in the legislature. I'm the minority spokes for energy. There was a lot of nuclear talk, a lot of energy, which I know we're going to talk a little bit about electric bills. So a lot of information there, some criminal justice information, and some mental health information. So best conference I've ever been to.
Awesome. Well, I'm sure we'll benefit from that added wisdom on this episode. So perfect timing. We also have with us returning guest Diane Jordan. You guys know her, you love her. She's the vice president of the Illinois Federation of Republican Women. She's also the president of the Tazewell County Republican Women. Also just a wonderful human being who I love seeing. Diane, what's up?
Hi, Collin. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I like that some of you got the red memo. And then apparently me and Chris just are on the opposite of the spectrum here. Chris, I mean, you're wearing black. You're all gloomy as usual, so I guess I shouldn't be surprised. But at least we got Michael here wearing his reddish, pinkish American flag shirt. That's exciting.
Much like in campaigning, Michael and I oftentimes try to build a contrast between each other. And I think our choice of clothing today is a great representation of that.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Well,
all about the contrast.
It's all about the contrast.
I think Chris's outlook on life is probably going to carry into this first topic because it's a gloomy one, but it's one we absolutely must talk about. Last week, we talked about the Mackenzi Felmlee's, her death and completely avoidable death, and the failure of DCFS and JB Pritzker and everybody involved. But more news has broken since that happened. There's like 3 different directions we can go during this topic, and we're gonna spend some time on this. The first direction we can go on this is JB Pritzker's response, which we're going to get into first, so I'll hold on that in a second. The second direction on this is the absolute abject failure of the caseworker and DCFS as a whole, and more details have broken about who this caseworker is and how they never should have been in this position ever. So we absolutely need to talk about that. And we need to talk about just DCFS as a whole and the failures there, and just how much the young people, the most vulnerable young people in this state, are being let down, and something needs to be done about it. So let's go into JB Pritzker first, though, because I've got some audio queued up, and I want to get that out of the way before Lane kills me for screwing up his production. But JB Pritzker was asked by a reporter, I believe Patrick Finkston, our friend who's been on a few times, asked him about DCFS in this situation. And, was there some culpability by Pritzker as the head of this? I mean, he's the governor. The buck should stop with the governor, at least if you're an actual leader. And Pritzker gave a sort of meandering response that, of course, passed the buck to 30 other people other than himself. There's one part of it I want to highlight. So we're going to play a 20-second clip here. Hopefully it works. Let's give it a try.
But, it's a crime that gets committed by someone, not DCFS, by someone in the process, someone in whose care that child is. Often it is that person or some failure along the way. It's typically not DCFS committing a crime.
Yeah, typically not DCFS committing a crime. It's somebody else's failure, right? Isn't that what we always see? JB Pritzker is the king of blaming everyone else. But I'm going to play it again, just the one clip, the one part, because I honestly think this part is the part that's just beyond the pale. Of course, now my computer will be really slow.
Typically not.
Here we go. Let's try it again.
It's typically not DCFS committing a crime.
Yeah, let's do it again. Just one more time.
It's typically not DCFS committing a crime.
A young girl is dead. 1,200 plus young people are dead since 2018. And the response is, well, it wasn't a crime by DCFS, at least. This isn't my fault. Governors lead. Terri, I want to start with you. Obviously, you're in the front lines of this.
Yeah,
I mean, real governors lead.
Well, I'm originally from St. Clair County, where this happened. In fact, I went to grade school in Belleville and Fairview Heights, and this happened in Fairview Heights. So, my grandparents, who I lived with, also kept what are now called youth in care, or these foster kids. So this goes back 50 years. We've not made the changes that need to be changed, but they're called youth in care because it is DCFS's fault. It doesn't matter if that child is living in the home of someone that they've tasked with that responsibility. DCFS still controls every movement in that child's life. And if the person is 2 or if the person is 17 or 18, but the most egregious part of all of this is none of the legislators who represent a portion of that county, and there are 3 of us, I believe, that have parts of St. Clair County just in the Senate alone, or at least, around it. We didn't get any phone calls. So I was able, after I found out about it, actually I read it in the paper, to contact DCFS and ask for answers. And their answer basically is the same thing that all state agencies say, and that is, this is still under investigation. Well, it clearly wouldn't even have been on anyone's radar if it hadn't come out in the Inspector General's report. So, I can always tell when Governor Pritzker is not telling the truth, because he couldn't even hardly get that out of his mouth. He didn't even believe himself what he was saying.
Well, you heard the break in his voice. I mean, it's one of the things that just really stands out to me in that clip. And by the way, I need to make sure I say thanks to Patrick Finkston for the clip. It was on his radio show. So thanks to the radio station and the Illinois as well for the clip. Make sure I give credit where it's due. But here's the thing. Pritzker's excuses were blown out the water. I mean, Beth Hunsdorfer has been reporting on this for Capital News Illinois, and I think without her, we wouldn't know a lot of the stuff we know right now. Pritzker said DCFS can't release it. He said that it's the prosecutor's fault that they can't release it, but then it just came out in the last 24 hours that the prosecutors have said, no, actually, we said back on June 27th that they could release this. So even they're lying and saying that they couldn't release it because of the prosecutors. And the prosecutors are like, no, actually, we said there's a few things we want them to keep back, but the rest we're okay with them letting out. So this is genuinely a cover-up by Pritzker and DCFS trying to hide the details. And let's talk about why. Because the details here are awful. The individual, the caseworker who was put in charge of this case has 11 orders of protection by 8 different people, has a violent crime. I think it's conviction. I've missed my notes here, so if someone else has the actual details while I'm finding them, feel free. But I mean, this is an awful human being who it turns out was copy pasting the notes from their visits. So the question is, were they visiting, even though they said that they were, or were they just visiting and didn't care and weren't paying attention? Who knows? But the idea that they were just copy pasting the notes, not even paying attention. I mean, it's just this caseworker was criminally negligent, and maybe that's a case that can be brought, but this was absolutely awful. And then DCFS tried to blame it on their subcontractor and say, well, that caseworker was just the employee of the subcontractor. It's not DCFS's fault. But here's the kicker. Several months after all this went down, DCFS hired that caseworker for a $75,000 a year job. So even if Pritzker is right, even if he's right that it was the subcontractor's fault, his agency went and hired this person afterwards.
And he can't keep saying that it's somebody else's fault, because this is systemic through every agency. So, the last time I was on the show, we were talking about Department of Corrections. Now we're talking about DCFS. We could talk about DHS. You could pick any agency, and the excuse is always somebody else's fault, right? So when you're the governor, you pick the agency heads, give them the authority to do it, and hold them responsible. The hold them responsible component is what always gets left out and never is followed up from the governor's office.
Yeah, and here's the thing. Let's put this in context. This Finkston said this. I've been saying this all week. I don't know who said it first, so neither of us can take credit. But let's just think back a little bit. During COVID, JB Pritzker said if it could save just one life, it's worth closing our schools and holding our kids back academically. It's worth locking people in their homes. It's worth closing businesses and shuttering businesses. If it could save just one life. Here we have over 1,200 of the most vulnerable, the people we should care about the most, and he's doing nothing about it. He marshaled every resource at his disposal during COVID, during the pandemic. Whether you agree with his actions or not, he showed what government can do at the state level if you really want to. And he's not doing any of that at DCFS. So don't give me this BS that, oh, he said it takes time. I mean, he's been there for over 6 years, but it still takes time. And we're making really good progress, though. I don't know that anyone that would agree that we're making really good progress. But I think in the context of what Pritzker has said and done in the past, it just shows how little he cares about this situation now. And Chris, Michael, talk about the politics of it. I think the reason why he doesn't care is that if he touches this now, it just puts it in the news while he's trying to run for president. So he needs this to go away.
Well, yeah, when you have a supermajority in the House, a supermajority in the Senate, and you have Republicans that are willing to, help address this issue, it should be bipartisan. But Pritzker wants to, put his head in the sand and pretend like this problem doesn't even exist. And these are some of the most vulnerable people in our state. And you see the, case after case from, Chicago all the way down to Southern Illinois where similar incidents are happening. And he's like, well, it's not DCFS's fault. They're not the ones that did this to her. Well, DCFS's role is to monitor these situations and ensure that the people that are in their care are being taken care of and being treated appropriately and not at risk of a situation like this occurring. And then to not even tell the legislators. I mean, that's absurd.
Mm-hmm.
So I think one of the main problems with this for Pritzker is that he is not battle tested enough to handle a situation. It's like you're not dealing with a state or a national environment where the media is holding Pritzker's feet to the fire on a daily basis. There is no genuine threat in the opinion of the Pritzker's people from the Republican Party. There is no threat in the eyes of the Pritzker people from within the Democratic Party. So there is no reason at the end of the day to run an effective government beyond one that it does the bare minimum. Okay? You dole out the money for the things that you want to do as effectively or ineffectively as you want, or at least you say that you're doing those things. And then all of these things tend to slip through the cracks because there's no actual process by which you can hold these people accountable. So that's what I think the biggest problem is. And it puts Pritzker and his people in a bad, frankly, from their perspective, they probably would want a more aggressive media or a more aggressive Republican Party because it would battle test them for these types of situations. They would have already been through this on at least one of the 1,200 other times a child unfortunately died in DCFS care, and they would have had the opportunity to help fix the problem. That's what government is supposed to look like, but that's not what you're seeing here. You have an ineffective government because, this is a conservative show. I believe we can all say that government is by nature at times very ineffective. Okay, so you have an ineffective government, you have an ineffective opposition party, you have no opposition within his own party, and you have an ineffective media. So all these things boil together, and it leads to a situation where Pritzker has egg on his face, and we're all just hoping that something's going to come from this, some actual change. And I'm skeptical, but I hope, again, I hope that this is something that could actually lead to real change.
I mean, I don't know how this guy thinks he's going to run for president. He's had a media that just eats out of his hands. I mean, you've got Finkston's the only one asking questions about this. Kudos to him, but I'm sure it doesn't make him popular in the Pritzker's administration. But you've got a media that has just propped him up and eaten out of his hand. He hasn't really had to run overly tough campaigns, at least not lately. I don't know how he thinks he's going to run for president, but hey, if it gets him the heck out of Illinois, I will cheer him on from the sidelines.
But don't you think that this is a bipartisan issue in general, and it's not about the funding. It's about a full-on mismanagement of this organization, and these kids who are the most vulnerable, they're the ones who are suffering for it. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and I know, I mean, I've talked to so many Republicans over the last couple of weeks who are like, we're ready. Bipartisan, let's go. We will pass bills. We will go down right now and let's do something about this. But, Democrats will happily call a special session to raise taxes on the suburbs to bail out Brandon Johnson's CTA. But to do something about kids dying in DCFS, no, that can wait. We'll just deal with that next year. No big deal. Let's, let me close. Just because I got to do it one more time, I'll close with Pritzker gets the final word here.
It's typically not DCFS committing a crime.
Yeah, so DCFS didn't commit a crime. A kid's dead, but it's okay. It's just a right-wing talking point. No big deal. All right, that's it. I've had enough. I'm moving on to the next topic. Mostly because I want to light a cigar and it felt disrespectful to do it during that discussion. So let's talk politics so I can finally start to smoke. We've got some movement potentially in statewide offices. I know we've been screaming about this for a while in the smoke-filled room. Looks like news is broken that potentially former Illinois Republican Party Chairman Don Tracy is starting to consider a run for governor. We've got Ted Dabrowski. Looks like he continues to inch towards a possible run. He was at an event down in Peoria and gave a speech, which we could talk about if you guys would like. It does look like we've got some movement, not enough. We need a heck of a lot more movement. But you know what? Beggars can't be choosers. I'm just excited we finally have a tiny little bit of movement. So let's talk about it. You can talk about those people. You can talk about other people if you want, but we need candidates. We've been begging for a while. Petitions start getting passed next week. So we got to roll, guys. What do you guys think? No one wants to take it first?
Well, I'll start. I'm a fan of Don Tracy's. So I have said, I've said all along, certainly, and I know you've said it here on the show, there is a pathway for, it's not even a narrow pathway for Republicans to win the governor's race. When you realize that Donald Trump got more votes in Illinois than JB Pritzker did, even though, Trump didn't win Illinois, he still had more actual votes than Pritzker did. So in a head-to-head competition between a candidate who doesn't hate Trump and a candidate like a JB Pritzker, there is a pathway to make that happen. I think whoever the candidate is, if they are from Chicago or from the suburbs, they've got to have a running mate that's from central or southern Illinois. If they are a little more moderate on some social issues, things like abortion or Second Amendment. And by moderate, I just simply mean that sometimes suburban 2A'ers look a little bit different than Hardin County 2A'ers, right?
True.
So you've got to have I think we have to have a balanced ticket. I don't think it can be two people from the suburbs or someone from Chicago and someone from the suburbs. I don't think it can be a ticket of two. I'm using very broad strokes here. So a ticket that has two old white guys on it. It has to be a little bit of balance with the state, a good cross section. And we do have a pathway for that. I also think it has to be someone who either has their own money or access to a lot of money. And we know very clearly that Republicans are never going to be able to match the money that Democrats bring in. But if we can stay within about a third, 1/3 as much as they have, I do think we work harder, and that extra amount of work will pull us over the finish line. So let's see how this unfolds. I've had a couple text conversations with Ted Dabrowski. I also like the idea of Ted running. I think Ted would be an example of one of those folks that probably needs to have someone who is a little bit more, not a moderate, but a little bit more balanced.
Okay.
On a couple of the issues. And when he and I have been texting or another group that we're in, basically just saying words matter, how you frame a topic. Like, let's say, for instance, school choice. The words school choice are hard sometimes when you get down into the deep part of the state because there aren't a lot of choices. So, but everybody supported investing kids, Republican and Democrat. So there's the federal version of that. I think that is an issue that really has to be massaged a little bit. And we could name some others that could be massaged a little to keep our very strong conservative values, but express those a little bit better to folks who don't like Donald Trump. But if you've got someone who's not a big Trump fan on the ticket, then you better have someone who's a hardcore Trump fan.
So balance. You want to see balance. I think and I think that's fair, especially because the Democratic ticket is so imbalanced. I mean, let's be real. Between the candidates, the incumbents, or the candidates who are clearly favored by Pritzker and his team, in 7 openings, you have 7 Chicagoans. So if Republicans can present an ulterior, an alternative that represents all of Illinois instead of just the state of Chicago, that could be and yes, I said that on purpose. That certainly could help show that balance that you're talking about.
Collin, I'm just tired, man. Like I've been hearing considers, thinking about, might look into. Come on, man. This is like, remember when Tom Demmer, he put out something that he was looking at running for U.S. Senate, and it was like the longest framing possible, and it was really funny, and people actually fell for it.
He was thinking about it, right?
He was thinking about thinking about it.
And there's news articles.
That's what I'm hearing every time we're on this podcast about somebody new jumping in the race. Look, I was here in 2021, and I remember when it was like big news that like Darren Bailey and Gary Rabine, Paul Schimpf, and I remember Jesse Sullivan announced out of nowhere, came out with this great video, money all over the place, and people were talking about these things months before petition season. And here we are, 5 days out, and it's still Jim Mendricks and a bunch of maybes.
No.
And listen, I like, talking shop as much as the next guy, and, Don Tracy's a good man, but I just want to hear somebody say they're running. And then we can have a real conversation about how does this person win a primary? Who are they going to raise money from? All of these other things. Because right now we're just dealing in hypotheticals. And I love logic problems as much as the next guy, but you can't save the state of Illinois just on hypotheticals, guys.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, we've said it over and over. We need candidates and we need them now. So, and I said it last week, and I think several times, this sort of idea that people have to be wined and dined and the red carpet rolled out for them to run. I mean, Terry, every seat you've ever won, you had to work your butt off to get. It wasn't just handed to you. And Diane, I know every inch you found in politics, you had to work your butt off for. Like, I don't know where this mentality came of like, well, if everyone aligns with me and all the donors from Chicago all promise me lots of money, and if you align promises me a big check, then I'll do it. It's like, no, that's not how it works. You go out there and you earn that. You show them you're electable. Go earn the support. That's what it's like to run for office. Like, let's go.
The first governor candidate that I remember, and it's a terrible example of a governor, but Walker, I can remember I was probably, I want to say 9 or 10 years old. And I remember, and I come from a hardcore Republican family, and I remember asking my grandpa, who is that guy that's walking all over Illinois? It jumped out like, I don't know how much money Walker had when he ran, but he did something, to Chris's point. He jumped out there, bad or good as a governor, corrupt or not corrupt. He did some stuff that didn't take as much money because I'm a big believer in shoe leather, knocking on doors, and selling yourself to the people. So yeah, Chris, I'd like to see somebody pull the trigger too, but I'm going to play devil's advocate in this and say it does take a lot of money. And quite often people will tell you they're going to support you. And when they find out that you don't have any money behind you, then all of a sudden you look behind you and they're nowhere to be found. Right. So, it takes a little, Paul Schimpf found out it takes a lot of money to just drive around the state to show up at events. And, you don't always get a free ticket to some of those events. It doesn't even matter if you're running, if you're not what an individual considers a serious candidate, you got to have a lot of money to get from point A to point B and get your name out there. If you don't have the money to get on TV or radio, then you got to have that shoe leather, but you still got to have a decent car. You still got to have money for gas. Right. So, I get Chris's point and I agree with him.
Yeah,
Terry, you sound like you know what it takes to run for governor. I don't think you're up this year, so just a thought, just throwing it out there,
I really like what I'm doing, and later on when we talk a little bit about some energy, I'm going to share with you because my wheelhouse is corrections, but I hope that I'm fast becoming somebody who is in that energy in that energy environment that can speak to those things. So I don't want to leave what I'm doing right now unless certain circumstances were available. So Chris, I'm saying yes with the one hand, I agree. And with the other hand, yeah, I'm not pulling the plug for that one. So
Well,
I would throw my name in for Lieutenant Gov for you, Terry.
thank you.
I mean, you
Chris,
already know how to
for
match
comptroller,
wardrobes.
We already said that, right?
You already know how to match wardrobes, so you got a good start. Michael, what were you going to say?
Chris Jackowiak for comptroller. That's what I was hearing.
I'm taking a CPA test next week, Butler. I'm going to be a shoo-in.
Obviously, we live in Illinois, and it's extremely difficult. And Pritzker's going to spend a lot of money. But I think if you look at like some of the key dynamics, like Pritzker does not have a strong approval rating. He's always just kind of hovered around like 50-50, right? So there's an opportunity there. You talk about like DCFS and some of these other issues that a candidate could latch onto and have a message of opposition to him. I think that provides some opportunities. I also think you look at the fact that there's going to be three on the Democratic side statewide. There's going to be three brand new names on the ticket, right? Because you have a new lieutenant governor that very few people know, and the ones that do not have a very high opinion of him, including Democrats that served with him in the legislature. You have an open seat for comptroller. So they'll have a primary there. We already know there's at least, 2 or 3 candidates that have announced for that on the Democratic side.
4 or 5 if you include me, Butler.
Oh, yeah. And then also you've got the Senate seat open with a, 3-way primary that's probably going to be, pretty nasty as well. And then you look at the national level with Trump's approval rating. He's in a much stronger position nationally on that approval rating than he was during his first term. Down 5 points, and that's been pretty consistent for the last 7 months. So I think there's a lot of opportunities if someone is willing to put themselves out there and put in the work. And also at the end of the day, it's like if we can get somebody serious that can make this, a 5 or 6 point race, then I think you see down ballot us winning a lot of other races. When you lose by 12 to Pritzker, like we did in 2022.
12 and a half, right? Yeah.
Yeah. It's very difficult for somebody that's running for a congressional or state rep or state senate to flip a seat. But when you get it within 4 or 5 points, then you start seeing other progress in other areas.
Yeah, I mean, Michael, I've been doing that math, as have you guys, and has our data team. I mean, if you're running even at getting it within 8 or 7 points, let alone, as you said, 5 or 4 would be a dream. Maybe a little bit aggressive, but hey, I'll take it. But even getting it, within 8 points, within 7 points, that difference, because people don't realize the top of the ticket determines turnout. So the race that all the rest of the Republicans in the state get to run in, and the electorate they get to try to win in, is going to be determined by the races at the top of the ticket. And so if that 3 or 4 point improvement at the top helps everybody all the way down. And we've got a lot of races in the state Senate, a few races in the state House that are going to be a few points apart. That who we have for governor, or whether or not we have someone for governor, could be all the difference between a bunch of wins and a bunch of losses in those races. So there's a reason why we've been harping on this. And let's get real. The tier 1 candidates are gone. Everyone's sort of sitting around waiting to be saved by some tier 1 candidate. LaHood ain't going to do it. He's not officially announced it, but let's be real. He ain't doing it. Ricketts ain't riding in here on a white horse to save all of us. Like, there isn't that tier 1 candidate out there. So these people who keep saying, well, this person has this weakness or this person has that weakness. True. Yeah, that's accurate. But at this point, we don't have a candidate. And the path we are on right now is somebody winning this primary who is not going to be able to run a winning campaign statewide. Whether that's, listen, I know other people have a different opinion on Mendrick, but most people I talk to say that's not going to help us in the November election. I'm friends with Del Mar. Maybe he runs, but he also has his vulnerabilities that could hurt us down ballot if he doesn't run the right campaign. There's risks here that not only could we not have a standard bearer, but we could go backwards at the top of the ticket if we don't go out there and get somebody, or someone steps up and says, I can do this and I'll do a good job. They all have their weaknesses. I mean, Dabrowski, I like to joke about it. It's serious. Like, he needs to get a little more interesting. It's very in the weeds, very, policy driven, which is him. But you got to be able to win hearts and minds and get people interested if you're going to get them to vote for you. I also think his ties to IPI and Rauner's turnaround agenda, Pritzker will use that to be like, do you want to go back to the Rauner days? I don't love that, but you know what? I'll take any candidate at this point. Don Tracy, love the guy, but he's 75, but love the guy. He could raise money. He could run a strong race. At this point, like Chris said, somebody get in, please. We need to move. Any final thoughts on this, or just the statewide in general before we move on? All right, let's go to the next one. We've got some movement legislatively. Let's talk about Senate District 26. We've all assumed that State Rep Nabeela Syed would run for Senate District 26. She's made it official this week that she will be running for Senate District 26 and vacating her House seat. That is obviously setting up a big race in 26. Darby Hills is the office holder there currently, and obviously we've been talking about it. This is one of the 4 big holds for Senate Republicans, one of the huge races they have ahead of them. Nabeela Syed, at least I think, was going to be the toughest potential opponent. So, I don't love this news. I would have preferred Maria Peterson or somebody else. But Darby's working her butt off. She's raised a ton of money. She's got $500,000 in the bank already. So she's certainly gonna make this a real race. What do you guys think about this one? You guys, no one's jumping. Come on now, guys.
I don't always want to be the first one to jump.
Chris and Michael, wake up, guys. Come on.
Look. I do, but Darby's my seatmate, and I can tell you that she's smart. She's not lazy. She's got a good grasp of very quickly. We always say it's like drinking water out of a fire hose. It really is. So very quickly, she got up to speed on most of the issues. It was. When she presented her first bill in the Senate, I think she found out pretty quickly that one really small mistake that she made was they didn't want her making mistakes, so her stuff was pre-written, and she kind of left the script and became the smart attorney that she is. And her bill, it was one I thought when she carried it, she's not getting that. She's not going to get that called. And she actually got it through the Senate. And I lost track after it left the Senate, but unanimously, which was just unreal, to make that happen. So Darby's she's no slacker. And Nabeela, she has strong support, but only in 1/2 of her district. Yep. And so for a candidate like Darby that's going to work really hard and has the ability to raise a lot of money, thinks outside the box in fundraising, like I already told her, if you do a fundraiser in Naples, Florida, where she has a lot of family, I'm in. I'm headed down there for that. So
Terry, thanks. Now Michael and Chris are going to expect that I'm going to fly them down there for that.
Well,
yeah, of course.
Stop being baggage and pay their own way.
I can't afford to pay my own way. It doesn't matter. So I think that here's the thing. I think running Nabeela Syed is a double-edged sword. On the one hand, Nabeela will be able to counteract the fundraising potential that Darby has. Darby is going to raise the money necessary to run a serious campaign. If there's nothing else to be said about Darby Hills, it's the fact that of all the Senate Republicans, Terry, you included, my apologies, she can raise money. Okay? She can raise money. So Nabeela also can raise money. She has a lot of contacts within the Arab and Muslim American communities, a lot of money there, big advantage, and kind of neutralizes Darby's fundraising potential. At the same time, you have to understand that Nabeela was able to win in her district the last couple of years because it was a more Democratic district, and there was virtually no Republican campaign opposition to her in 2024. Okay, so she ended up matching what Kamala Harris got. Now, taking that to a Senate district, which is less Democratic and has an incumbent Republican in there, I don't think that Nabeela Syed is the best candidate to do that. In fact, I think you would have been better off maybe running Maria Peterson for the third time. That's a bold statement. Bold statement. I know she's lost twice by very slim margins, but I just think that Nabeela works in her House district. and she might not work with the whole Senate district. Anything is possible in this district. It's Harris +9 for a reason, but I think this might be the overplaying of the Democrats' hand, moving Nabeela up to Senate.
Listen, the one thing that certainly I like to see about Nabeela in this race is that she is unabashedly progressive. I mean, she has voted for so many of the far left bills down in Springfield, and she hasn't had to be held responsible for that in her state rep district. You better bet that Darby Hills and her campaign will hold her accountable. The Senate Republicans will hold her accountable. So I think if you run the right race, you absolutely can win this district. And Nabeela, what she gains by being a hard worker, by being young, by being likable, she loses a bit of that by being just super, super far left. And that is not a super, super far left district. And we've talked about it before that, yes, Trump lost that district by 9. The trend has not been in our favor in that Senate district over the last 8 to 10 years. It's very anti-Trump. But we've said it before, we'll say it again. The progressive tax went down by over 25 points in that district. It is not a liberal district. It's a very anti-Trump district. That's just the reality. That's just the data. But it's not a super liberal district. And so Nabeela Syed is going to have to answer for her record. And she's going to run into a lot of voters who go, "Ooh, I like you, but did you really vote for that?" So there certainly is going to be an opening here potentially. All right.
I think at this point, the only other hiccup in this race is whether or not Marty's going to primary Darby, Marty McLaughlin, or if somebody else on the Democratic side is going to jump in. But it seems like if you want to run for office in that district, you're either going to run against in Marty McLaughlin's seat, or you're going to try and backfill Nabeela on the other side of the district if you live on that side. So yeah. I think Nabeela is going to probably have a straight shot. The only question is now is whether Darby does.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, they're going to have to run a good race. I mean, the standard Republican talking points, I think we talked about it when we talked about the Gov race and the statewide races. The same thing here. I had a couple friends who sent this to me. The Senate Republicans and House Republicans have all been sending out their announcements for those who are running for re-election. And Sue Rezin, who I love, one of my favorites, and I doubt she wrote this. It probably came from staff, but her announcement was sent to me by a few people, and it's not bad, but it's also not great. And again, not to pick, we always try to talk about how we could be better. It's all centered on, crime, rising crime and higher taxes. And, Sue is a dynamic human being who has a great story to tell, who's stood on some really great issues. Let's say cost of living and energy. I mean, she's one of the leaders on energy in Illinois, but we've still got sort of the Republican copy paste, strengthen public safety, grow good paying jobs. This is all sort of this is the Republican copy paste job that we always do. 2026, if we want to win, we got to be much, much better in our messaging. That's statewide, and that's in all of these tier 1 races. We can do better. We must do better. It's how we're going to win these races. All right, let's go to the next one. We've got more legislative districts to talk about. This on the not so great side. You're starting to see more Republicans step away on the legislative side. We've got Dale Fowler from Senate District 59 who's stepping away. I want to give him an early OG of the Week nomination simply for being one of the few politicians I've ever seen make a term limits pledge and then actually keep it. And I know there's the wiggle room of, listen, I pledged it, but if Democrats aren't going to do it, why should I do it? And I get that. I get the politics. But I can say that while also giving Dale Fowler credit for what he's doing. Looks like Paul Jacobs is going to run to replace him. So now that opens up House District 118. Michael, I know looks like there's a whole bunch of people wanting to run in 118. We also now see that Representative Dennis Tipsworth's going to be leaving the State House as well. So that's another retirement. You're starting to see, we've seen this obviously with Don DeWitt, and then last cycle we had a bunch. It's hard to build a bench and it's hard to build talent in the state when you get 5 and you lose 5, and then you bring 10 more and you lose 10 more. And I think part of this is a larger problem I've been seeing in the party, which is there's just no hope right now. We are a gloomy Republican Party in this state. I hear it from more and more people. There's just a complete lack of hope, of some vision, something we can get behind and get excited about. And I think you're starting to see it where you see some really good people who are like, listen, I'm fighting. I don't feel like I'm getting very far. I don't feel like there's a lot of hope, so I'm just going to step away. This is incumbent on all of us to restore some level of excitement and hope in our party. Otherwise, these are not going to be the last retirements we're talking about this cycle. So I went off on a tangent. I don't know if that's interesting to anybody, but you guys, if you want to talk about these specific races or just the need to bring some hope back in our dang party, take it wherever you'd like.
I would like to say on that one that Representative Tipsworth, he is not not my legislator. I'm in Howder's district, but I'm only a couple miles outside of Dennis. And my house is on the market, but I'm not moving yet. But there's some opportunity there for some of the younger adults that are getting into politics. I know a couple of them that are possible candidates for that. And there's also a couple of the old ones, I shouldn't say old, but older, that
Experienced.
are, yes, that have ran before and are not what the 105th is looking for. We do need to bring the excitement back. That's part of what I'm trying to do within the Republican Women Group, is inspire and excite people that it's okay to be a Republican, and it can be exciting and it can be fun. And so when I think
like
about
Michael
the
Steele said, the
105th,
hip hop Republican Party. I mean, come on.
Right.
Right.
When I think about the 105th, that's what I'm hoping for, even though it's not my district, it's near enough by, and I know Dennis, and I just think if
Dennis
we
is
could
a
get
great one.
somebody,
I mean, again, we're losing a really good one there.
yeah, and if we could get somebody young and upcoming and ready for the challenge, it would be a really great seat to have. It's such a safe seat.
Well, and this is how other states do it. Again, I try to share my experience working outside of Illinois because we don't tend to do things great in this state. The way they build the bench is this sort of, movement of people move up, and then, the legislators would then run and move up, and then someone would move up and take their spot, and there's movement. But I think those who have said that we've kind of been a little protectionist and conservative and defensive as a party over the last, I don't know, decade, honestly, they're not wrong. I mean, in some cases, I know you have to, but there's been a lot of unwilling to take a risk and, I've got a safe seat. It's like we're holding on to our representative seats, our Senate seats, like they're lottery tickets. And it's like they're no disrespect, but it's a legislative seat. Like it's meant to be. It's like, you move, you get some experience, you lead, you get some things done, and then you go to the next thing, and then someone else comes up, and we build a bench. And I think you saw that with Terri. I mean, you were a state rep, then you moved up to state senate. I mean, if we could get better at that sort of movement, it was like mentioned in our internal Discord this week that Democrats have sort of perfected this assembly line of taking a nobody and then getting them some experience and then putting them in the legislature and then running them for Congress or something. Like we got to get that sort of pathway where we're bringing people in, giving them chances to run for something, helping them move up. Like we're never going to have we always say we have no candidates, we have no bench. This is why. So I think a little bit more of I want to see movement up instead of movement out, but a little bit of that. Let's move up. Let's bring the next ones. Let's move them up. We got to start to have this abundance mindset instead of this so defensive protectionist mindset.
Well, I think, Collin, to your point, the women have tried to do it with organizations like the Lincoln Series and the Illinois Federation of Republican Women. But we have trouble, especially like with the Lincoln Series, getting the funding that is needed to train that bench. So not making excuses, but I'm just saying,
the reality, we got to talk about it.
We have training programs within our own party, but it is like pulling teeth to try to get people to support it. So I would say whoever's listening to this, as a former president of the Lincoln Series, I think you would hear Sue Rezin and I both say, for me, I'll speak for me, but I know Sue and I were in the same class in the Lincoln Series. That was the most significant organization, the most significant training that I got overall. Now there's some things you can go into where there's a little more deeper training, but to get the overall, to give you the confidence you need, that's an organization that does that. The men, we don't necessarily have a training, an official training program for the men, but kind of looking at the term limit kind of thing too. The average legislator right now in the House, in particular, only serves, I think it's 6.2 years. Some of that is because with social media, you just are beaten up every day, every second of every day. And with the cost of advertising now, you're talking about, just coming out of Canada, they're actually limited. They're only allowed to spend a total of $50,000 on their races. In the US, a House seat, you might spend $3 million on a House seat. And then if you have to add in a primary where you're beating hell out of, during the primary and have to run again. So we have to do better at not beating each other up in the primary and concentrating. This idea that the cream comes to the top if you have a primary, that's bull. So, the cream should be separated out way before the primary season. We have methods to be able to do that, so that those people that we've been training, mentoring, and so forth, we say, this is the person, right? And we're going to support them in the primary. And then we have our money, our time, our talents all working towards the general. But I'm kind of a minority of that thought.
Terri, it's interesting. I've been one who's advocated for primaries can help us see who's ready for the fight and who's not. But I do think there's some wisdom in what you're saying, in that if we could create another mechanism, another way for the cream to rise for the top, that's fair, that's open, that everyone gets a chance to compete prior to the point where we're beating each other up publicly and spending tons of money, ripping each other apart, I could get on board with that. My issue is when you give the power to someone to go pick who gets to run, who doesn't get to run, that's where we get in big trouble. And oftentimes pick wrong, let's be real. And so that's what I don't like. And that's the logical or illogical conclusion of what you said. That's what people then take it to. Well, then fine, the establishment or the grassroots will just pick our candidates. And I think there's the answer is somewhere between the two. Can we create a system where we can let people compete in a fair, transparent way? And then, yes, the cream can rise to the top, maybe even before we get to that primary election season. There's something intriguing there that could possibly work.
Well, we have that process in down ballot candidates. Did somebody run before? Have they raised money before? We have our central committees where did they volunteer to be appointed as a precinct committeeman in an open precinct? Did they carry their water? Have they learned their craft prior to running? Instead of someone just popping up one day and saying, I think I'd like to be a state representative. No, I've never run for anything. No, I haven't raised any money. And no, I have no clue about what the issues are. So I'm going to be quiet because Chris's head's getting ready to explode.
You're not wrong. I will say, just as one caveat to what you just said, it doesn't have to be political, because I've done a lot of recruiting for candidates, and sometimes you find the best candidates haven't been knocking on doors for 20 years, haven't been going to the rubber chicken dinners. I mean, if they've raised money in the private sector or run businesses, or, they've volunteered for civic organizations or charities, that to me is equal in experience to somebody who might have done that as a township trustee or a school board member. So I maybe that's what you meant. I just want to make sure I clarify.
Yeah.
They don't have to have been that Republican precinct captain or committeeman for 20, 30 years. Because listen, I've been a committeeman, I've been a precinct captain. Like, just because you've been in that role, it doesn't make you ready to go win a $5 million race. Oftentimes it means maybe you're not ready, because the best candidates were out there getting real life experience. So just one clarifying point. But Chris, go ahead before your head explodes.
Sorry, I had a question real quick though. When you talk about that, are we talking about even the younger generation, the 20s and 30 somethings, who have a heart for this and have been trying and wanting to be a part of things and doing all those small things as far as volunteering and being a PC and all that goes along with the work of it? What is the age that people actually take them seriously?
Fair. Listen, as somebody who got my start in the YRs, and I started up my own YR organization in the county because none existed, and other than a couple people who still to this day I give credit for helping us out, the rest of the Republican Party, I'll straight up say it, fought against us and not only didn't help us, they worked against us. So it's a common thing for kids in their 20s, young 30s to want to get involved and get crapped on by our party. So Diane, you're not wrong. And we would have to think through that, because we need young blood. We need young excitement. And obviously what Terri and I just went through maybe does preclude some people like that. And that's wrong. That shouldn't happen. So you're right. We should consider that.
Yeah, it really shouldn't. I have so many of the younger generation. I keep saying the younger generation, but the 20s and 30s who come to me, who reach out to me in our area here in Central Illinois and ask what they can do, how they can be a part of things. And so I'm sending them to, their county GOPs to get involved in the parades and volunteering and all of that. And then it kind of ends up where it's this, they get stopped in their tracks because, when they start to talk bigger or dream bigger or hope and work bigger,
True.
they're still 20 something. And that's the frustrating side of it, because I really want to help these younger people. I want to build the bench too. I want to be a part of bringing them along and keeping the excitement for them, and not having them be like, oh, I just got crapped on by whoever that said I'm not old enough or haven't done enough.
Yeah, that's a great point. Chris, why don't you be the final word on this, and then we'll go to the next topic.
So, Diane, I am very thankful for all of your support for the 20-somethings out there. And I will be sending you a draft of my petition for Christopher Jackowiak for Illinois State Comptroller, because you believe in the cause of the 20-somethings so well. But on a serious note, on a serious note, then this conversation, though I am serious and nobody else runs for comptroller, one of the problems I think with a non-primary way of picking candidates is that the Republican Party isn't strong enough to do that. When you're the Democratic Party of Cook County, which isn't as strong as it used to be honest, but when you're the Democratic Party of Cook County, you can haul everybody over to the electricians hall and say, hey, committeeman, you're going to pick who we're going to slate for this position. And they're like, okay, we're going to go with this guy. And those people don't really lose that often. You can do that. But if the Republican Party in the state it's in this state, starts going around and saying, we're going to slate this person from that position, or we're going to formally endorse another person for such position, it gets really complicated. Now, I do agree with Terry that at the heart of all of this, the job of our state central, our county central committees and our township Republican organizations is to pick candidates and support them. That is what their job is supposed to be. But there are probably only a handful in this entire state that if they endorsed a candidate for a specific office, that endorsement would hold some type of weight. Okay? So I think we need to get back to a point where the organizations are strong enough before we start looking into alternative ways for the Republican Party to pick candidates. Until then, you are going to have to play the voter popularity contest.
Fair. That's a fair point. All right, last thing politically, then we're going to get into a couple key issues that we really do need to talk about. Some good news for Senate Republicans. You look at some of the key races they're looking at. You've got obviously a hold now in Senate District 33. It was a hold before with DeWitt, but it's going to be a tougher hold now without Don DeWitt in 33. Good news there, thanks to the McHenry County blog for breaking this news. Suzanne Ness is going to be not running for 33. She's going to stay in her House seat. So that's she was the rep for one half of that Senate seat. So potentially she could have been a strong candidate there for the 33rd. So great to see. And then as Democrats look for their candidate against Seth Lewis in Senate District 24, there's a candidate that they really wanted, Erica Bray Parker, who's in Wheaton, who's been in the office there and been talked about for a long time as an up-and-coming Democrat. She's going to run against Amy Grant and is not going to run against Seth Lewis. So not great news, I guess, on the House side, because obviously now Ness is going to remain in that seat, which makes 66 potentially more challenging. And obviously Amy Grant now will have a little bit tougher of a time in 47. So certainly, good news comes with bad news, but at least on the Senate side, glad to see some good news for them that Seth Lewis didn't get, at least not yet, a top tier challenger, and potentially same thing for whoever we've got to replace Don DeWitt in 33. So small update, but wanted to pass that along. And if anybody has thoughts about those races, jump in if you'd like.
I anticipate that the Senate Democrats are going to be a little conservative this cycle, just because of Harmon's cash problems. And, I think they're definitely, in Senate District 26, they're going for it. I think that one's already kind of in the cards. 33, they'll go for, but I think they're not as focused on seats like the 24th or the 41st or any of those. I think it's going to be a more conservative cycle for the Senate Democrats.
You'll see. I would certainly wouldn't mind that if they do that. They've got some retirements of their own. Mark Walker's retiring in 27, so they certainly have things they got to work through themselves. 41, I'm still nervous about, but John Curran always overperforms, so we'll see what he can do there. But yeah, there's a lot of action in the Senate this time around.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I know that it doesn't necessarily fit the narrative that only the Republicans have problems in their lives, but you look at some of these legislative races, and from what I'm hearing and then what we're seeing with these two races that you had just mentioned, is that the Democrats are kind of having a hard time as well, right? They're asking some of their state reps about moving up. They're getting turned down. There's not been a lot of announcements on these top tier races of this is who's running against Erica Harris, who's running against Seth Lewis, who's running against Kevin Schmidt. Like, petitions start on Tuesday. Where are the candidates?
True.
So
they're all running for Congress. They're all running for Congress, Butler.
Yeah, right. I think
which plays in our favor. I mean, Michael, you're making a good point.
So there's problems on both sides. I mean, heck, you got three Democrats from Madison County that are all trying to run against Mary Miller for Congress, and we still don't know who's running against Erica. Yeah. So it's like, all right, well, it sounds like there's enough problems to go around. Unfortunately, our problems are just at a little bit of a higher level.
Yeah, but you're right. And I always count on you, Michael, to bring the positivity, and you did it again. I mean, Democrats certainly are having their recruitment challenges as well. All right, let's get into a few
Maybe
issues.
They'll bring back slating.
Let's get into a few key issues here, since I don't want us to run out of time before we get a chance to do it. We talked about Governor Flip Flop, Governor Hypocrite, Governor whatever you want to call him, JB Pritzker, on gerrymandering, who has the gall to attack Texas for wanting to gerrymander and calling it cheating, when JB Pritzker, by his own language then, and by his own admission, is the biggest cheater in the whole country when it comes to gerrymandering. He continues to go back to this well. He's been called out, even by the media, who usually gives him a free pass. He's been called out for being a hypocrite on this, especially after promising to veto gerrymandered maps and still signed them, of course, no surprise. He did a roundtable, brought in some state legislators from Texas and did a roundtable in Chicago, trying to raise awareness for this. Leader McCombie and a whole bunch of other Republicans ripped him a new one for this, as did some members of the media for the political theater. But I mean, my goodness, like, have some awareness. Like, if there's ever a bad spokesperson for an issue, it's JB Pritzker on gerrymandering. You don't just let that pitch go by and move on to the next pitch, big guy. What are you doing?
Well, I saw, when these maps came out a couple of years ago, when they drew these and they were rated by all these organizations. I mean, it was labeled by a lot, news media, organizations that analyze this kind of stuff, as the worst gerrymandering in the country. Mm-hmm. I mean, you just look at the 13th congressional district and you cannot say that, we're not at fault here in this state with what we've done. So it's like Pritzker was against gerrymandering, then he was for gerrymandering, now he's against it, and he's getting the flack he deserves.
Well, Michael, here, let me read a quote, because this is the most JB Pritzker quote in history. When pushed on this at a press conference, he said he was still in favor of a commission, but, and I quote, "It's not like I can force the legislature to do something like that," end quote. It's literally JB Pritzker's position. Well, I would like a commission, but I can't force the legislature to do something like that. That is JB Pritzker in a nutshell. Just spineless lack of leadership. If supposedly he truly believes in fair maps and good government reform, well, I can't force him to do that. I mean, that is the weakest sort of, this stuff drives me crazy. We need a governor candidate because somebody needs to be holding him accountable for this BS.
And that statement isn't even true, right? Because he could have vetoed the maps if the House passed and then forced it to be a bipartisan process.
100%.
But instead, he signed them.
100%. So we got to talk about fair maps. That's the other half of this story. Just anyone else want to talk about Pritzker's hypocrisy before we move on to the fair map side? It's free reign, guys, or did I cover it? All right, let's go to the other side. Let's go to the fair map side of this topic, which is, yet again, we've got a bipartisan initiative launching. And I say yet again, not negatively, just this is the third time that this has been tried. But there seems to be signs that they've learned from their efforts in 2014 and 2016. Supposedly, I haven't seen it, but supposedly the proposal is better crafted this time to actually work within the confines of what's constitutionally allowed in Illinois, which is good news. And we got a bipartisan group that's formed here. You've got Daley, you've got who else is there? You got LaHood on this, the Elder. You got Bill Cadigan, who I love, who's great on this type of thing. Michael Dorf, a Democratic general counsel for the Democratic Party. So it is a true bipartisan effort here that's launched. I'd love to see where this goes. Again, I know the politics of it, how difficult it would be to pass, but let's be real. You want to change anything in Illinois. You want good government in Illinois. This is how it happens. The only way it will happen is with some form of a fair redistricting process. Otherwise, it ain't going to happen.
I think that at some point, if there's any hope for fair maps in the state, which it's very slim, let's just be honest with ourselves here, that's Chris being negative, it's going to be because the vested interests in this state are so sick and tired of dealing with a Democratic supermajority year in and year out that does nothing for them. They can't get anything done. The state's going down the tubes. I mean, these are heavy hitters in a way that isn't, they're not political heavy hitters. They're like, interest heavy hitters. Like Bill Daley is an interest for like finance work. Ray LaHood is interest for like the transportation sector. Like these guys aren't like just good government types. They actually have a vested interest in things that happen in the state. And I think part of the reason why, a group like this is forming at this time is because Illinois government has gotten ineffective and inefficient to the point where even the people who rely on it for their interest, that they want the government to help the finance sector, they want the government to help the transportation sector, we are going to get to a point where the government in this state cannot help those interest groups. Okay? So if there's any hope for the Republican Party to claw back any resemblance of respectability from a maps perspective, it is going to be because the interest groups which have helped the Democratic Party for so long are getting screwed over by the same people they are helping. Okay? That's what I found interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I do like to see the people that are involved, as you said. I mean, there are some decent hitters here. They're going to unveil this, looks like in a couple of weeks, at an event in Chicago at the Union League on August 19th. So keep an eye out for that, and we'll keep talking about it.
I'm going to comment on something that Chris said, because Chris, when I listen to the show, I sometimes agree with you, not always. I've agreed with you on almost everything today. It's pretty awesome. One of those special interests.
Terry, what are you doing to me? His ego is going to be on them.
I love Chris, but I've always wanted to actually be on here and be so relaxed I could give Chris a hard time, because I give Michael a hard time all the time, and Diane too. One of the special interest groups I think that we're probably going to need to be watching that might do exactly what Chris is talking about is the insurance industry. When you have Janulius out yesterday, I was interviewed while I was in Canada, actually interviewed by a Chicago media individual. And she was talking about just car insurance or homeowners insurance or whatever. And, JB Pritzker, and in this case, Janulius, think if you control the cost of insurance, then you're just going to make them all behave, right? But you'll find what you saw in California, where the big dogs just leave, and then you have no insurance coverage. So we're going to have to be watching that, because what the insurance industry has said now at the Springfield level is we're just not going to fight these bad bills anymore. They used to come in and they talk to Republicans and say, we've got to fight this bill. We can't have this. This is not good for small business. This is not good for the consumer. But the last 2 years, it's been more of, you know what? We can't win these fights, so we're just going to raise our premiums. Yep. So at some point, you can only raise premiums so high, and then you have no one who's participating, in the industry. So I'm going to be watching what happens with energy, what happens with insurance, what happens with manufacturers, because these are people who are being beaten up. Yep. And until they got engaged in the progressive income tax, there wasn't the will or the money to fight that. They've got to come in a way, the same way that they came in for the progressive income tax, they're going to have to come in on fair maps. So great way to put it, Chris.
Terry, I think it's interesting the way you put that. I haven't heard somebody say that way, but we've talked about over and over on this show for the last 2 years how a bill moves forward and it sounds great, but we say this is going to raise your insurance rates. It passes and we move on to the next one. We always say, listen, these all sound great, but the insurance companies will have to raise rates to cover this, and then the insurance companies raise rates to cover it. And now you see Alexei and all the Democrats and Pritzker come out and badger them and attack them. It's like, wait, you passed those mandates that they have to pay for, so they had to raise their rates. You did this. It's Democrats in Springfield. It's JB Pritzker. They did this. They caused these rate increases, and now they're coming in and attacking them in two ways. One, they're attacking Illinois job creators like State Farm and blasting them publicly, which the Illinois Chamber said was a pretty dumb idea, and they were right. But they're also making stuff up. With the home insurance, they were blaming, they're just making us pay for Texas, which legally they're not allowed to do. Alexei, the quote, the story you said, which I almost put this in the agenda, but we didn't have time. But here, let's talk about it. He was saying that, well, what they're doing is they're using zip codes and racial things to charge people more money. And the insurance company came back and said, we're not allowed to do that. No, we don't do that. Like, they're making stuff up to badger this industry. And Terri, no one has really explained that industry just said fine and gave up. I mean, they did used to fight a lot more in stopping some of those bills that were raising rates. I don't blame them for saying, fine, you know what? You want higher rates, you get what you ask for, but Democrats can't have it both ways. They caused the high rate. Don't go blame the companies now for it.
Well, they have been able to have it both ways because we don't communicate well enough as Republicans. Michael always reminds me of this when I give a speech. I always say, and many others do too, but if you're in the majority, you have to legislate. If you're in the minority, you have to communicate. So instead of whining about being in the minority, you got to be in their face and say, I agree with you, these prices are too high. And you can't just stop with saying, well, you caused it and then back away. You have to say you caused it, but we have a plan to reduce those costs, right? And the plan is the same thing it is in schools. You have to reduce those mandates. Using insurance as the example, insurance companies are going to insurance company, right? They're going to make money. They have their
have a fiduciary responsibility to do so,
and they have stockholders and so forth. And you can gripe about it and complain about it all day, but the system is what the system is. The problem comes in when you have these unfunded mandates or mandates on business, and then you get mad because they raise their prices. We don't talk about that enough as party.
Yeah, I mean, we're a broken record when we say we don't communicate about X, but you are 100% correct. All right, let's go to the next topic. Terri has kind of hinted at this, so want to make sure she has as much time as she'd like. We got to talk energy here. I mean, I have so many people. Just go on Facebook, go on X, go wherever you like to go. I'm not hip enough for TikTok, but maybe it's there too. These people are showing their bills right now in Chicagoland, and you're looking at people who are showing off $400+ bills for their electricity when it was less than half of that last year, and it is just absolutely crazy how much people are paying for electricity. And we did it. I mean, the Chicago Tribune had a great op-ed on this, thanks to CEJA, thanks to FEJA, thanks to, Pritzker and the far left agenda in this state. We are dramatically decreasing our supply of electricity while we're also dramatically increasing our demand by bringing in these power-hungry sectors of the economy. Of course, prices are going to skyrocket. It's basic math, yes?
Yeah, it is. So one of the main things that we talked about at this conference in Canada was trade, but primarily about energy. So I went there expecting the Canadians are going to be really mad because President Trump, President Trump does what President Trump does and might have made them mad. That's not what we received. They were very happy to have us, and these were all legislators from all over the Midwest and from Canada. The biggest thing was Canada needs the United States for military. The United States needs Canada for uranium. If we want to be the leader in AI, if we want to be the leader with these data centers, then you have to have the massive amounts of energy that it takes to do that. You need uranium to do that. We cannot meet the need without nuclear. So while we get up to speed on where we need to be with nuclear, we're going to have to continue to allow for coal generation. And why the environmentalists continue to push out natural gas, which burns clean, there's no explanation for
Terri,
that.
You look at how much cleaner America is in terms of how much emissions we emit thanks to the move to natural gas. I mean, it's tremendous how much we've made improvements. No one ever talks about it, but we've become so much cleaner as a country because of that transition.
If we don't use nuclear, we cannot get where we need to be. It has to be there. And another thing I learned was that it costs nearly as much to get a small modular reactor online as a full scale nuclear facility. Of course, the footprint is smaller, but Canada's leading the way on small modulars through Westinghouse. So it's going to come fairly quickly when it comes to nuclear. So the holdup is not, can we do it? The holdup is in regulation. So I'm hopeful for Illinois that we're going to get that taken care of through the Trump administration, relaxing some of those regulations. then we're going to have to catch up with Illinois, because otherwise we cannot have the AI or the data centers that we want to have. So it's really about, do we want to be a leader or do we want to get left in the dust?
Yeah, I mean, Terry, I mentioned Sue Resin before, and how she's been a leader on nuclear energy. That's what I would have loved to see her really focus on, because cost of living right now at this moment is electricity. It's energy. This is what people are talking about right now, and others have too, but Sue has been one of the leaders on that. I know you've been leading on that. And we've got some great, it was bipartisan down in Springfield to allow nuclear reactors to finally be built again in Illinois. But of course, politics killed it. JB Pritzker killed it. But here's the thing. Up in Wisconsin, Tony Evers, the Democratic governor who's now stepping down, they signed it. Here's his quote. This is a Democratic governor from up in Wisconsin who Pritzker supposedly aligns with quite closely. When he signed the bill, he said, "We can't afford to choose between mitigating climate change and protecting our environment, or creating good-paying jobs and building a strong economy. We must continue our efforts to help lower energy costs and improve energy independence by reducing our reliance on out-of-state energy sources, and these bills are an important step in the right direction." A Democratic governor saying that, and he's 100% right. I would stand right next to him when he says that, but we're getting left in the dust. If Illinois doesn't do this, Wisconsin, other states are absolutely going to lap us here, and then we're going to continue to import energy instead of exporting it.
Yeah, I think Trump has set a goal of 30 new nuclear facilities by 2050, and I believe 10 of those he wants online as quickly as they can be done. So the nukes are coming. They're going to be someplace else, or they're going to be here, and the industry will follow the power. When you talked about energy bills, my home, which is a very humble home in Murfreesboro, my bill last year in June was $240. This year was $680.
Whoa.
No changes, right? So I live in the MISO region. Across the whole MISO region, we've been feeling it for multiple years now, where PJM up in the Chicagoland area is feeling it now. We've been feeling it for a couple of years because the middle of the state in the MISO region is all primarily coal and natural gas, right? So as the coal plants shut down all over the Midwest, it goes back to basic economics, supply and demand. If the supply is not there and the demand is high, you're going to pay for it. But in this case, you're paying for it because you have to go to those energy auctions, and the energy auctions drive the cost of what we're going to pay at home. So and it isn't because somebody's think I know what Twitter says and all that is. There isn't a push for someone to say, "Oh my God, I can make billions of dollars right now." It's that the supply is not there. No. So if the supply is not there, it's going to go to the people who can or are willing to pay for it.
Yeah, you're right. As Terry and I have been going on about energy, it's a pet topic for me, so we've had some fun on this. Anyone else have thoughts? I know we already got through a lot of it, but just in case. You guys good? We covered it. All right. I mean, Chris still lives with Mama. He doesn't pay his electric bill, so he doesn't know what we're talking about.
Yeah, if only you knew, Colin.
All right, that brings us to our last couple segments here. So this section it's our news you can use. We go through this more quickly, though. Anyone here who has thoughts on any of these topics, feel free to jump in. The whole point of this section is we want to equip you, our audience, with the things you need to be talking about, that you need to be letting voters know about, because over and over, we talk about energy rates going up. We talk about insurance rates going up. I can point to 30 different topics over the last year we've covered in this section of the podcast that led to those increases. So you got to know what's coming down the pipeline, which is what we keep you appraised of. The first one is this. Congratulations, Illinois. We are number one. We're now officially the highest property taxes in the country. For a while, it was New Jersey and us. Sometimes we toyed with being close or a little bit above them, but now we are officially number one in property taxes in the country. I don't know, guys, are you proud of this? The highest property taxes in the whole country. The only time Illinois gets to be number one on something, it's usually tax related.
That's true. It's all about those unfunded mandates that have driven up the price of education through the roof.
Yeah, I mean,
a lot of your property tax bills coming from is from schools. We see it over and over. Go ahead.
And other local government. Every time we put an unfunded mandate on a local government, they have to pick up the slack.
Yep.
So it goes straight to property taxes. There is an issue right now in Grand Tower, Illinois. So that's Senator Fowler's district now, used to be mine, where a energy facility closed several years ago. The Jackson County Board continued to spend the money that they, from that facility, even though the facility had been closed. Now they've been ordered to, the federal government's going to claw back a lot of that money. And so property taxes in that little bitty town where unemployment is probably around 90%, their property taxes will quadruple in this next year.
Unreal. That's where I want to see our governor. Stop going to North Carolina campaigning for president. You've got real people who are hurting. Maybe go there and do something to help the real people of the state you were elected to govern. It's a little early to give an OG nomination, but I got to give kudos to AFP Illinois. Their post about this was just perfect. Said mission accomplished for Governor Pritzker's 2019 property tax task force. That was just cherry on the top. That was beautiful. I'll grab a screenshot and give it to Lane to put it up in post. But the only thing Pritzker's done on property taxes is that task force back in 2019. I don't know about you, but my property taxes haven't gone down. So thanks, Pritzker. Mission accomplished. All right, let's go to the next one here. We've talked in the past, as a matter of fact, on our SFR back in December of 2024, we were talking about the number of state employees who've been caught defrauding PPP. And at that time, it had broken over 275. Well, the latest update from OEIG is now that number is nearly 375. So they've looked through 501 cases. They found 373 findings of misconduct from government employees, Pritzker's government employees who have defrauded the PPP system for their own personal gain. So we continue to talk about the failures of JB Pritzker's administration. There's a level of corruption there that runs pretty dang deep. All right, let's go to the next one here. Lion Electric. Pritzker told us this was a big deal when he offered them millions of taxpayer dollars to come into Illinois. Well, not only have they shut down their plant in Joliet in Illinois, but now they avoided all warranties on buses sold to school districts. So all the school districts in Illinois that took advantage of the programs Pritzker put out there to buy these school buses, now those school buses, they're on the hook for any problems with those buses. And it looks like, according to a report, Lion Electric had sold 2,200 electric commercial vehicles across North America, and a lot of that in Illinois, because obviously they were based in Illinois. We don't have a number of how many school districts have these buses, but a story by WirePoints has several of these school districts talking about how now they're on the hook to try to figure out how to pay for this stuff. Mark Lennon had a great quote about, when will politicians learn? We continue to do this in Illinois. Big ribbon cuttings by JB Pritzker when we bring in 50 jobs and spend millions of taxpayer dollars to do it. And yet, we learn over and over that businesses trying to survive in this horrible anti-business climate in Illinois, it doesn't happen unless you hand them millions of taxpayer dollars and beg them to stay.
And let's keep in mind too that those electric buses cost about $450,000, and the grants to purchase those were $250,000. So forcing schools to buy buses that now don't even have warranties on them, that's exacerbated by the fact that they probably had to throw a whole lot of skin in the game too to make that happen.
And Michael, you talked about property taxes being driven by these mandates. I mean, this school districts, they've got to pick up the cost now for this. For Pritzker got his press conference, he got his big hit. Ooh, I'm pro-business. It's school districts now that are paying the price for this in this specific area. And where's the money going to come from? In many cases, their only option, raise property taxes. So yet again, we've got Pritzker's moves leading to higher property taxes in local communities.
Well, and those repair bills on an electric vehicle like that are going to be astronomical. If they have an issue with a battery or something like that. I mean, those are not cheap.
Imagine if we built things in this country and this state, and Illinois could just become the school bus capital of America. Well, let's get some actual school bus plants going. And I don't mean electric school buses. I mean those creaky, gas-guzzling things from the 1980s that Butler and I went to school on, and you go over a bump and your head would hit the ceiling, and that's how I have CTE, or at least one of the reasons why I do. Those buses made me a man. And I think if Illinois doled out grant money for those buses, it would be a positive contributor to the economy. But instead, we're getting cute with electric school buses. That's not what the American people want. American people want real school buses, damn it.
Chris, you breathed in all those fumes over the years?
That's right. I would have a 190 IQ instead of what I got now if it wasn't for those fumes. But you know what? We got to even out the playing field, guys.
All right, that explains a lot. All right, let's talk about Chicago. Brandon Johnson is now pushing for a head tax or some other tax because he's facing a $1 billion shortfall in the budget next year. Apparently, he has ruled out a property tax, though, Johnson tends to flip-flop, so we'll see. But he's looking for all sorts of tax increases that he can find. Meanwhile, again, thanks to Wire Points for this, we'll bring up the graph on screen. This is Chicago's GDP when compared to the other top metro areas in the country. Since 2019, Chicago has the slowest growth of all 15, only 4% growth since 2019. Atlanta in the same time was 10. Houston was 13. Miami 17.5. Phoenix 20. Chicago was only 4% GDP growth since 2019. Moves like this by Johnson and the progressive movement leading in Chicago certainly are not going to help that GDP growth. And you wonder why jobs aren't growing in Chicago. People aren't going down to take the train down into Chicago to go to work because there isn't GDP growth. There isn't economic activity because we keep doing dumb stuff like this.
It's about that time where Johnson starts throwing around the sell the parking meters type ideas because, and listen, I don't think a property tax increase is a good idea. I don't. But at some point, if you're an actual mayor of the city of Chicago, you kind of got to realize, like, oh no, like this city's going to go bankrupt unless I do something. But instead, we're trying to get cute and we're trying to dance around the issue that the city's broke. And we're like, well, we'll just have the billionaires pay the tax. And it's like, all right, dude, like, good for you. But, like, you're not actually going to get anything out of this. So, again, I said on last week's podcast, if you want to drag the city out of Chicago out of the hell that it's in right now, you really got to get creative. And this isn't the type of creativity I was talking.
Maybe this is why you have, I don't know if you saw the video of the people in Chicago that go down to Lake Michigan every day and just scream into the lake. Maybe this is why.
I do the same thing with the pillow.
You posted that in the Discord. Maybe Lane can pull out a screenshot of it or something. I don't know, but it was classic. Listen, I've gone to those rage rooms where you get to like use a crowbar or a sledgehammer and like bust up old TVs and stuff. It honestly, it does relieve stress. So I don't blame these people who are screaming at Lake Michigan, but maybe they should go to the ballot box and change
That's
things.
what I was going to. We should do a poll of those people and see how many of them are still voting Democrat. Maybe that would lessen some of their rage.
Yeah.
I could loan them a couple of my goats if they needed some yoga or something. I have a few of those.
My wife has done that goat yoga, and she doesn't like it as much as puppy yoga, but she does enjoy it.
No, I've never done goat yoga, but my husband has rolled down the hill a couple of times trying to feed him in goat gymnastics.
What would you call that pose that he was doing with that the roll down the hill? What would you name that pose? Is that chase the goat pose or something?
I just call it goat gymnastics. But to the point back to Brendan Johnson, he has the lowest. I think it was the lowest approval rating in the history of recordings in the country. Right? There's been nobody wwho has so. It's almost like whenever he opens his mouth, everybody just goes la 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 la, because whenever he talks, stupid is coming out.
You're not wrong.
I don't know what to say about him. Who cares what he has to say? It's a little bit like under the Biden administration where you're looking at your calendar and saying, how many more days of this crap do we have?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of residents of Chicago who are counting down those days.
Mm-hmm.
All right, couple more here, and then we'll move on to have some fun at the very end here. So Cook County, if you live in Cook County like I do, when we release this episode, it will be August 1st. That is the day your taxes are due, and yet the Democratic-run county still hasn't figured out how to mail you your bill. As a matter of fact, in the story that I'm looking at here from Cranes, they were asked, when do you think you're going to be able to do it? And they literally said, we don't know yet. We're not sure. Maybe September 1st, maybe October 1st. I could slip to around Thanksgiving. We don't really know. I mean, this is unreal. Civic Federation President Joe Ferguson was quoted in that Cranes article talking about how this is a killer, especially for local governments. I mean, you've got school districts and local governments who, if they don't keep a huge reserve to cover for this, now they're going to have to go borrow some money. They're going to, and you ask, why do school districts keep large reserves? This is why, especially in Chicago or in the Cook County, when they have to deal with this kind of crap. I mean, they're going to have a huge delay in their collections and the money that comes into their account. They don't have an option. They still got to pay their payroll. They still got to pay bills. So going back to Michael's excellent point, yet again here, this is where government is forcing school districts to tax more to fill their reserves because Cook County can't get its act together and just send out the damn bills.
Are they still going to charge everybody late fees since they don't get their bill until 3 months after it's due?
They'll extend it, I'm sure. Maybe they already have. But yeah, I mean, that would be so Cook County to still charge people late fees.
Let me just say there's a reason why Katie didn't get slated again by the Democratic Party.
Yeah, yet another situation where you go put in a far left. Ooh, I love what he has to say. And then when he gets control of government, you realize he doesn't know how to pull a lever to save his life. All right, last one here. Again, we're beating up on Chicago, so why not keep it going? It was reported by Cranes this week that restaurants are feeling the impact of a number of things. Tariff uncertainty is causing them challenges, but a major reason are the policies in Illinois, like the new ordinances that have been passed, requiring certain paid time off and certain requirements on wages. All these mandates on small businesses. Well, when you look at it, they now have a number here that 35% increases in labor and product costs on these since 2020. For our restaurants in Chicago, 35%. When restaurants are operating at slim 1, 2, 3, 4% profit margins, you jack up their labor costs, their product costs, their material costs by 35%. You're going to end up with an empty storefront that used to be a restaurant.
So this was my original field. I owned a restaurant for several years, and in the Department of Corrections, food service was kind of my thing. And I've worked for multiple franchise companies. Labor, food cost, and paper costs. Those are your biggest costs. A really, really good month, 5% profit margin. That's enough that you just stub your toe and you're done. Most restaurant owners are not uber wealthy. They're trying to figure out if when the vendor brings their food, if the check that they write for their food is going to clear or bounce. So when, to your point, Collin, when you jack up minimum wage, when you jack up in many cases where a tip is going to, you're non-tipped workers because you're so much for that. All of that stuff factors into the point where they just don't want to stay in business anymore. You get into food service because you love that field. You stay in it because you are so financially in debt that you can't get out any longer. And then at some point, people just throw their hands up in the air and say, I got to get out or I got to kill myself.
Well,
right?
And Terry, and honestly, that passing the tip wage that now they're trying to bring down to Illinois to have all of us have to have that same tip wage requirement with the higher minimum wage for tip workers, even though they already are making above that minimum wage. We're seeing already what kind of an impact that will have in Chicago. That would be devastating to our restaurants statewide if we were to bring that as a mandate statewide. All right, that's our news you can use. Let's go have some fun as we close this down. Our OGs and clowns of the week. Who do you guys got this week?
I got to give a clown of the week to Senator Chris Belt for paying LaToya Greenwood $1,500 a month as a consultant. And I think, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, and we had this kind of as a bench, the Chris Belt Senate District. But with mistakes like this, I mean, she underperformed Kamala by 6 points. So
is she consulting? Is she consulting on how to lose elections? Because if she is,
I was wondering.
If she is, then Chris Belt's that race should move right up to our start races. Let's go. Let's take them out.
Let's go.
I like it. That's a good clown. That's a good start, Michael. Good work.
My clown is almost always going to be Brendan Johnson because, like I said, if his mouth is moving, stupid is coming out. So. There was a couple of Facebook posts this week, couple X posts that basically talked about his word salad. So there are times when less is better. Lou Lang actually is the one who said that to me as a freshman House member. Representative less is better. He said it from the chair, right? And I took that lesson. Brendan, less is better.
No, I will challenge you, Terry, not to disagree with you because I love you, but for us as Republicans, more is better,
Well,
Brandon Johnson,
true.
please. Keep talking, please.
Agreed.
What else you guys got this week?
I would have to say our governor for
Okay.
Clown of the Week with that DCFS and all that goes along with it. The big picture of it. It just has to change. It just needs to be fixed. And he is in charge and he's the one to lead.
Should be for sure. Yeah, you're guaranteed to win with that nomination this week, Diane.
Yeah.
So I have a clown and I got a half and halfer. My clown of the week is Orland School District 135 for their hiring of and the controversy that came from it of hiring an assistant principal of one of the schools that were completely against what their own hiring practices were. There seemed to be a clear political agenda in hiring this individual to be assistant principal. They fired the old principal. They fired the old assistant principal for no discernible reason. So it caused a huge uproar in Orland Park this week. It seems to still be going on to some extent. So Orland School District 135, you are my clown of the week. And this is my half and half. It's kind of the person who's both an OG and a clown of the week. And that's Milwaukee Brewers first baseman Andrew Vaughn, who has just been lighting the world on fire. He may be the next Barry Bonds, which is great. I love the Milwaukee Brewers. I hate the Chicago Cubs with a burning passion, and I'm glad to see him doing well. But as a White Sox fan, first and foremost, I got to ask, where the hell was this? In the 4 years that Andrew Vaughn was on this baseball team, he had a couple okay seasons. Nothing great, nothing. But this guy was a first-round draft pick. And then this year, he's terrible. He's worth like negative 1.6 WAR for your baseball stat nerds. You know what that is. And now he goes over to Milwaukee, and like this guy is literally Babe Ruth. Like he might be Mickey Mantle.
Well,
And
Chris, doesn't that speak to our White Sox ability to grow talent and nurture talent? I mean,
look,
all these guys. If Luis, I don't know because I'm not looking at my phone. I don't know if Luis Robert is getting traded yet or not today. But the moment Luis Robert finds another team, dude's going to be back to being a superstar.
Hey, I don't know if this should be like a clown or an OG, but I posted it earlier this week in the group Discord. The White Sox have set the record. White Sox fans set the record for most beers per game with 4.2.
Yeah, I mean, we're number one in the country on, like, they're trying to guess who it was in that clip. I saw it, Michael. And yeah, White Sox fans drink the most beers per game. And my response was, you have to if you want to make it through the dang game. Yeah.
And $13 a throw, too. Like, we're just giving Jerry
$46. $46. 4.2 beers per game.
Yeah. All right, let me jump. Oh, go ahead, Terry.
I didn't want to flip topics, but I do have an OG.
Oh, go for it. Yeah, you're good.
I spent the last few days with her at the conference, and that's Noreen Hammond. I don't know if people realize that Noreen mentors many of the legislators, but she was a great mentor to me in the House. I'm never with her where I don't learn something truly good and new about good legislating, and I hope Noreen stays for many, many more years in the legislature. She is one of the most fun people to be around, most knowledgeable people. But to watch her in Canada, the level of respect that she had with the Midwest CSG board members, she is a rock star, not just in the U.S., but in Canada as well.
Ooh, wow. All right, I got a couple here. So they're not necessarily OGs, but they're certainly in memoriams. I'm not a Cubs fan, but Ryan Sandberg is a Chicago and Illinois hero. So seeing him lose his battle with prostate cancer, gone way too soon, and certainly thoughts and prayers to his family and to our Cubs fan friends. That's a big loss. Another loss, our friend Brad Goodman, who's been on the podcast, lost his father, Jerry Goodman, and Brad and his family have endured a lot of loss over the years. Certainly this one hurts them personally. So, Brad, sorry for your loss and to your family. Certainly you guys are in our thoughts. He was a veteran and sounds like just a wonderful example to his 12 grandchildren and to his children. So that family and all of us will feel the loss of Jerry. My other OG here is a fun one. In Shia Kapos's newsletter, she ain't a fan of us, so we never really make it in there. But she asked a question like she sometimes does. She asked, what mascot besides an elephant and a donkey would you choose for the major political parties? And my OG is Kent Gray. His response was hilarious. He said a niffler from Harry Potter, which I've learned from my wife. I'm looking at my little boy who's wearing a Harry Potter outfit because my wife dressed him this morning. He said a niffler for the Democratic Party, which is hilarious because if you've seen the movies or read the books, the niffler's the one who's like grabbing all the money, grabbing all the jewels, grabbing everything they possibly can to put in their pouch. So Kent Gray, that was hilarious. Well done. Niffler for the Democratic Party. On the clown side, Terry, I think you'll join me on this. JB Pritzker went on X or Twitter and of course continued his lies to the Illinois people and said that Republicans in Congress and Donald Trump are trying to rip food off the tables of 360,000 Illinoisans with their snap cuts. And the truth is that JB Pritzker is the reason why those 360,000 Illinoisans might lose their SNAP, because we would lose zero funding if Pritzker would just get off his butt and actually run this state like a governor and lower our error rate. But over 10% of the money we pay out for SNAP in this state is error, and yet JB Pritzker refuses to do anything about it. He controls whether or not those SNAP cuts occur. And so those 360,000 Illinoisans who might lose their SNAP benefits and go hungry, that's on JB Pritzker. And if he would actually decide to be the governor and do his damn job, none of those people would lose their SNAP.
Oh, and some of that also is, remember, you don't lose your SNAP benefits or your unemployment benefits if you are 18 to 65 years old, otherwise healthy, not someone who has a 12-year-old or undergoing to school. All you have to do to keep your benefits is be looking for work, working, going to school, or volunteering for a not-for-profit 20 hours a week. That is not unreasonable. So if you don't want to make people, go look for work and you're going to keep paying them, Illinois can keep doing that. But the federal government's not going to fund our nonsense. So yeah, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, and stop blaming other people for your failures, though JB Pritzker is the king of it ain't my fault. All right, let's go to our closing thoughts. We'll let our guests close this week. So Michael and Chris, Michael seemed to bring the heat. Chris finally woke up, but he gets to go first because Michael brought a lot more heat than he did. So Chris, your final thoughts.
Listen, we're getting to the point where I'm not joking, guys. Like, we need candidates for office, okay? I've got my team drafting up a petition for me to run for state comptroller right now. So
I did not approve this.
By the time of next week, okay, you're going to have Chris Jackowiak petitions scattering the state of Illinois, okay? So everybody, if you are a financial expert and you have nothing better to do next year, please run for state comptroller. I know nothing about finances. The Republican Party does not want me as their nominee, people. So please, somebody run for these statewide offices. Other than that, if you are a candidate, remember petitions start on Tuesday. And I'll just tell you guys the same thing I tell everybody. Don't sign Democratic petitions, okay? Don't run also as a Democrat at the same time. Don't do silly things with petitions, okay? So if you're a Republican running for office, sign Republican petitions. That's how you stay on the ballot. It's an easy enough to do. So thank you and have a wonderful day.
Michael, thanks for bringing the heat, making up for sleepy Chris over there. What do you got to close out?
Oh, well, I'm on board. Chris Jackowiak for comptroller if we don't find anybody else. I might get on like ChatGPT this weekend, try to put together a couple of logo options. I say let's do it.
I mean, I'm already burning myself up, making phone calls, trying to find some damn candidates for these races. I got to work extra hard now because I don't think anybody wants that.
I got you some 4x4 locations already, Chris. Don't worry about it.
Sheesh, it's mutiny over here. Diane, I love having you with us. Thanks for being here. Your final thoughts for the week.
Thank you. I love being here. I got a little worked up about that younger generation because I'm passionate about that and I want to help build the bench. So I really want to speak positively to all these young people, and we know that they watch this too. Don't be afraid to put your name out there. Don't let people tell you that you are too young when you have a heart and a passion and a hard work ethic to be a candidate, because I believe in you and I know a lot of other people would too. And I just think we need to express that more to that generation and get them more involved, and they're willing to do it. So let's go out there and find them and make them some candidates.
I like it, Diane. Well done. Terry, thanks so much for being here, especially because, I know you've been traveling like crazy lately. You get to close us out. Your final thoughts.
Well, I'm going to pass Chris's petitions if he'll send them Send them to me. I'd be happy to do that.
What are you guys doing to me?
You
I
know,
would pass them too, Chris.
like you know as much about finance as many of the individuals who are thinking about it, whose names I've heard. So I'm all about Chris for comptroller. I would say, hey, you know, seriously on the petition issue, the crazy stuff happens, and the silly kind of things like. We had a candidate thrown. I'm actually kind of glad that candidate got thrown off the ballot, but a candidate thrown off the ballot a couple of years ago because they whited out signatures and then piled the petitions on top of each other. So not only was it whited out, which you can't do, but then you also couldn't get the petitions apart. So don't do dumb stuff. Get your petitions, get them early, like in the first month, so you're not trying to play catch up. And I always tell candidates, whatever the minimum amount of signatures are, you get them yourself. Everything else is the gravy that keeps you from getting knocked off the ballot.
Good advice. I'll carry on with that, and I'll make Ryan, our operations team leader, hate my guts. But us at SFR and at Core Strategies, we're true believers. We help the Republican Party with no benefit to us. Oftentimes we get crap for it. I'll make this offer because I've seen way too many petitions done wrong. Our team's a pro. We've gotten over 700 now, almost 800 or over 800 candidates on the ballot and had 0 knocked off. If you'd like to have somebody, a professional, look at your petition and make sure you didn't screw it up, Ryan and our team would be happy to look at your petition. No charge. We wouldn't be trolling for your business, but we got to get our Republicans on the ballot. Too many times, every cycle, we get at least 5 candidates call us with a few weeks left going, I think we screwed up. And then they got to go out and start all over again. Don't be that candidate. So we'd be happy to look at it and make sure you're not going to be one of those. Let's get our candidates on the ballot. Let's get out and run. Petitions get passed next week. So let's go already. With that, we'll close down. We'll catch you all next week in the smoke-filled room.